Hello, good afternoon everybody. My name is Casper. I'm from info@opportunity.to. Now today what we're going to be talking about is the pre-hire assessment and screening system that we're going to be designing for a lot of our clients. Now I would like to make note that what's been going on recently, maybe not recently, but a lot of information has been coming out, and a lot of credible data and science has been coming out that has basically made a lot of the assessments that companies use completely, how shall I say, irrelevant. The reason why is they found there is a very low correlation between that which is assessed and what is actually rendered in the workplace. This is very fascinating, and one of the reasons why is because of what is famously called big data. Now, data has always existed, and neural networks have existed since I think like the 60s, but it's the fact that the data is now being able to be curated, and the fact that it's so efficient now to curate data, and also through machine learning we've been able to analyze other stacks of data, and because of we have the cloud now, individual entrepreneurs or individual businesses, they can scale to what they need, and a lot of the software now is available through third parties, and for example, there's Big ML. There's so many tools out there that have been used in many different facets of business, and some of them are actually quite boring. But at the end of the day, the reason why we want to do a high quality pre-hire assessment is for the fact that when you go to hire somebody, they cost a certain salary, so whatever it may be, okay? So the cost of hiring somebody is actually their salary. A lot of people will say the cost of hiring an individual is the training that's required. Yes, though, think about this. Will that individual be a detriment to the business because of other things that are not directly tangible? For example, a certain behavior within the workplace may eject others who have higher value, so basically poisoning the work pool. Other individuals may be very conscientious and hardworking and orderly, but in fact they're making major errors, and so they're very efficiently ruining the business. As ridiculous as it may sound, it's absolutely true. A lot of people in a lot of businesses, sometimes it would be better if they just didn't show up to work. They're doing a great job of doing a job, but they're not doing the job of growing the business, if this makes any sense. So this is why myself, I've been completely fascinated by the Myers-Briggs, as well, as a lot of other people. Myself, I've studied the Myers-Briggs, endlessly, and I've seen probably thousands of examples of assessment to seeing people how they operate in daily life, and I was always curious, because I always had these bold assumptions about me. Oh, hi there.
Hello.
Oh, for me, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
First time.
Oh, how are you today?
Huh?
How's work today?
Okay.
It's okay.
Always busy.
Hiya.
Always busy. I take the photo with my this one.
Oh.
Yeah. You internet now? No?
No, I don't
Only
need
this one, right?
No.
I go to buy this,
Oh.
so I have little sample.
Oh, because the internet is broken?
Now we have and need one more. Need one more this one.
Oh, I see.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. It's okay.
Okay.
You're welcome anytime.
Huh?
Anytime, you're
Oh,
welcome.
thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Yes. If you finish, you no need to put this one. Just for, yeah.
Okay, no problem. Of course.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Oh yeah, so where was I? So I've spent a number of years looking at assessments, and I've been able to observe people in daily life, and that what I would call maybe a knowledge bias, if that makes any sense. Maybe if what you're doing is you're attributing what you think to be actual factual, and trying to determine that what you see in reality is because of your knowledge. So your quality of discernment is because of the knowledge that you've attained. But the thing is, with the Myers-Briggs, they've found a 0% correlation between an individual's Myers-Briggs and their ability in the workplace, and that's why myself, I think a lot of large companies would benefit from revamping what they're doing, because a lot of people are building teams and they're biased towards certain personality types, but it turns out that this is not an effective way to determine someone's ability to function in a job. Now, let me repeat that. Myers-Briggs does not effectively determine if someone can do a job. 0%. There's a 0% correlation. And I'll go further into why. But the number one reason for someone... Oh, by the way, before I get into that, so we'll be charging $200 per assessment. And if you have any questions, you can contact us at info@opportunity.to. My name is Casper, and we are going to be delivering this very shortly, and we'll be doing sales for this service very soon. Anyone who is interested, get into it now, so before your competitor does, because this is we're using breakthrough technology, and we're applying newfound data and science from the PhD level. It's fascinating that this stuff hasn't been more publicized, but it's what I would say the hybrid of the Big Five and a sophistication of that actual model. So a lot of the Big Five, I think, has been around since maybe the 90s, something like this. Though what it was the people who had designed the Big Five, they could not observe anything else. That being said, we haven't been able to observe anything in excess of that. So, scientifically speaking, because we cannot see anything in excess of that, we must use that in which what we can see and we can accumulate data for, if that makes any sense. Because we ourselves are limited to our senses. And even if there is data, we do not have the capacity to discern it. So, and that is why machine learning, I don't want to call it artificial intelligence, because I myself am a proponent against the use of that term. Neural networks, and so on. And of course, the quotes will be 30 euros, 25 pounds, 30 US dollars, 40 Canadian dollars, more or less, for these assessments. So I have the authority to speak about this subject because I have been directly exposed to hundreds of thousands of job applications and the data behind it by running a job search application. In fact, I've seen the data for over, I don't know how much it is now, but over 1 million sentiment swipes on job applicants and by employers. So whom are they selectively looking at? And we've been able to look at what kind of language attracts certain employers. And what kind of language used by employees attracts certain employers to them, and vice versa. And what we're designing is not going to replace the human component. The reason why is the test will be digital, so it will be accessible through the internet, and just like a lot of tests that have been done in the past, this one it will be form-like as well. So some of the questions may be in the multiple choice answer style for the cognitive ability test, and for the personality portion, okay, you will be strongly agree to strongly disagree with neutral. And for some of the questions, we may even simplify it further to accelerate the process, because another thing that we have found out is if assessments are too long, people will feel in some way they'll have their privacy violated. So you need to have a careful balance. Some people who may not even need the job, right? The people who don't need the job may, in fact, backpedal from the process because they'll feel offended, especially those who are largely competent. It hurts their ego with certain things I've mentioned in the past. So you have to be careful. There's a careful balance, and in some disciplines there might need to be a custom application for that very purpose. Though it's actually more difficult to make a simple assessment, so we will need to invoice you for that specific assessment. We need to give you a custom invoice and maybe some consultation, depending on what kind of volume you like to scale it to. if you'd like to have a app developed, if you'd like to have it on your company website, would you like to provide a link? Would you actually like to have a software application running on your computers within your business? Maybe you have a machine set up for new applicants to sit down at. Whatever it may be, we can assist you there. In addition to that, it's even when you do receive the data, we will be providing you a way to be able to assess it appropriately. And what we recommend that in fact that you consult us, and we'll wrap it up within that 200 Hong Kong dollar per assessment fee. And it's very important that the data is interpreted in a non-biased methodology, for the reason being is that if you are presented with 10 non-biased options which you may have overlooked, then you can use the bias on that of which is scientifically presented to you to be there, so thereafter you can decide on the highest quality candidate. And there is a very strong correlation. We cannot give you a correlation, but from the data, because we've created a variation of the ones that have already been designed, we can give a correlation of about 0.3, which can retroactively increase your profitability per employee by 30%. If you're currently at a 50-50, so you're hiring a bad employee and you're hiring a good employee, if your systems are, let's say, at 0.1, so you can scale your profitability per employee by 20% by using our assessment methodology. So, there's a lot of cognitive ability tests, and a lot of people will say that these tests are not relevant to the business they're operating. But what I would like to challenge you with, for example, if you grow up in a certain country, there is certain crystallized knowledge that you should be able to attain. For example, if you had graduated from high school, and if you had graduated from university, and there's this crystallized intelligence, okay, can be assessed appropriately. And because there's a very high correlation between crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence, okay, I think the correlation is 0.9 is the correlation between crystallized intelligence and fluid intelligence. For that very reason, we can possibly we don't have the data yet, but in likelihood, if you are interviewing people for a certain discipline, the cognitive ability test could be designed for individuals who work in a certain discipline, so that there isn't any risk of people who have cognitive ability but may not have been exposed to that type of knowledge. So our cognitive ability tests are designed to a workplace discipline. And the reason we're able to do that is because we've been able to curate data from a few federal and national employment data sets, and along with certain competencies within those disciplines. And then through extrapolation of that, we've been able to abstract from a pool of, like a large pool of standardized cognitive ability tests. We've been able to design, well, we don't even need to design. We can extrapolate through the natural language processing the appropriate questions to ask, so there isn't any risk of losing that correlation. So yeah, my personal opinion, okay, is that cognitive ability should be assessed first and foremost. The reason why is if an individual is not able to render new knowledge and information, that they'll, once they arrive in the workplace, they'll, with the traditional term of onboarding, they won't be able to onboard as effectively, and they may become a liability to the business. So it's very important that we assess cognitive ability first, so that we do not strain a potential hire further down the line. For example, if you determine someone's cognitive ability first, and they have, let's say, they are a high value candidate, but they, for the reasons I mentioned earlier, they decide not to continue with the remainder of the assessments, you'll still have a grasp of them, and then you'll be able to follow up. And that's where your recruiter or your hiring manager needs to kick up their AA game for their own hiring sales process. So follow up. If you're losing candidates, even though they have high cognitive ability, that's your fault. You need to grab these people, right? Otherwise, you're failing yourself and your business. And if you're letting these people go, whoever is in charge of your business should probably try to reassess why this is happening, and try to clean up the process and make it more simplistic. So even though we offer multi-stage assessment, because this is what is very attractive to clients, because they want to reduce their risk of making a poor hire. At the same time, you have to understand that people fall through the gaps by not actually completing the assessments, and we can't risk this. And what I had mentioned before with the curation of the discipline-specific competencies, we can then do a cognitive assessment for the task suitability within your organization. So for example, if you are hiring a carpenter, some basic arithmetic will be necessary, right? Also some spatial tests will be very important. And you can imagine in different disciplines, right? You know, if you're hiring a cashier, are they able to, you know, figure out change? You know, Sally has $30, but the bill is, you know, $27.20. How much is the change, right? Things like this. For more sophisticated disciplines, you can imagine that there might be other questions that you could give. So for a programmer, you know, how do I look up the directory? You know, just like basic stuff like this. You go to the terminal, right? If you're a nurse or a doctor, if someone has yeah, anyways, you guys get the point. All right. We then do a motivation plus interest analysis. Okay. This is to determine if there's anything lurking within this person's personality that might be not suitable to the culture of your business. Okay, and for retention metrics, it's also very important. Okay. So some people have certain motivations, and if you're onboarding these people, and if they're not appropriately motivated or interested in what your company has to offer, then you might bring these people on for a couple of years, but you lose them, you know. And all that training and that onboarding and the time you've invested in the individual, it's all gone, right? And that's no good. We don't like that. Right, and you know, skills competency based on the positions or generalized industry knowledge, right? Actually, like what I was saying, if someone was a programmer, you'd actually give them maybe a math or maybe some basic arithmetic as well, or maybe some more sophisticated one, maybe some if and or statements, right? To figure out. But as for, let's say this programmer is you know, you want to find out if they actually know anything, right? So maybe you can determine, oh, do you know how to, you know, look up the directory? So they're in a terminal. You know, if someone's you're looking for a pharmacist, you know, if a person has this common cold, can you give them this medicine? I'm trying to make it a quick trick question. And we actually have a large database of these industry-specific questions that we can populate into a form very quickly. So we're able to do this, and we can provide a lot of value to businesses in that regard. I really think that you should take a look at what we have to offer, and of course, if you have any questions, you can please follow up with info@opportunity.to, and the value of these assessments is very fairly priced, and if you don't do it, you might risk losing 20% of your profitability per employee. and this is quite the science is out, and if you don't do an appropriate pre-hire assessment, you're going to lose out big. And if anything, please don't use Myers-Briggs. You should go to the way of the dodo. I myself, even though I've invested so much time, you need to be able to adapt and learn when things become defunct. It's completely irrelevant. So thank you very much for listening, and yeah, that's the end of the presentation, and I look forward to doing business with you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.